A waitress used to give food secretly to a poor little girl every day. She said, "Quick, eat before the manager sees," and the girl replied, "Thank you, I was so hungry." Until one day, a young billionaire arrived with 3 police cars at the diner's door, and everything changed. The sky was starting to darken when David Walker parked his car in front of the Sunshine Diner. The warm, yellowish lights of the establishment were the only bright spot on that nearly deserted highway. After 5 hours of non-stop driving, he needed a strong coffee and something to eat. The small town of Pine Grove was never in his plans. It was just a necessary detour after the main highway was closed due to an accident. It was such a tiny place that it barely showed up on digital maps, the kind of town where everyone knows each other, and a new face is immediately noticed. David straightened his expensive suit jacket before entering. Even though he was exhausted, he maintained the impeccable posture demanded by the business world. No one would ever guess, by looking at this controlled, composed man, that deep inside he carried a void as big as the universe. The little bell above the door chimed when he walked in. The smell of frying oil and coffee filled his senses. The diner was almost empty, just an elderly couple at a corner table and a trucker at the counter. A blonde waitress with her hair in a ponytail approached him with a tired but genuine smile. "Welcome to the Sunshine. What can I get you?" she asked, holding a worn-out notepad between her fingers. "Coffee. Extra strong. And a roast beef sandwich, if you have it. Coming right up in about 5 minutes," she replied, turning toward the kitchen. David surveyed the place as he waited. Worn red vinyl seats, old photos of the town on the walls, a flickering neon sign. It was the kind of place that seemed frozen in time. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't have stopped there. But now, 2 years after the tragedy, he had learned that control was just an illusion. Life could change in an instant. On the opposite side of the room, a muted local news broadcast was playing on TV. David watched the images for a moment. The same stories as always. Politics, the economy, the world moving on as if nothing had happened. As if lives weren't cut short every day. The waitress returned with his order. Her name tag read Emily. She placed the plate on the table with care and filled his coffee cup. "Need anything else?" "No, thanks," he replied, noting how Emily seemed distracted, constantly glancing at the clock on the wall and toward the kitchen door. David ate slowly. The coffee was surprisingly good. When he finished, he left a generous tip on the table and headed for the register. An older woman with gray hair served him efficiently. Her name tag said Debbie, and unlike Emily's, it had a small gold star, some sign of a long-time employee. "First time in Pine Grove?" she asked casually. "Yes." "I'm just passing through." "That's what they all say," she smiled. "And some of them end up staying." David forced a polite smile in return. There was nothing that could keep him there or anywhere else. In the past 2 years, he had become a nomad disguised as an executive. Hotels, airports, and meeting rooms were just backdrops for his endless search. "Is there a decent hotel in town?" he asked, putting away his change. "The Pine Lodge, 2 blocks down the street. It's not fancy, but it's clean." "Thank you." He turned to leave, but Debbie added, "The customer restroom is out of order. If you need one, you can use the staff bathroom. Just go down the hallway and exit through the side door." David thanked her with a nod. He did need to wash his hands before getting back into the car. He followed the indicated hallway, past the employee's restroom, and decided to exit through the diner's side door, preferring to return to the parking lot without walking around to the main street. That was when he saw it. A scene so unexpected that it stopped him in his tracks. Near the dumpsters, partially hidden by the shadow of the building, stood a small girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Tangled brown hair fell across her face as she devoured something from a plastic plate. Her clothes were dirty and far too large for her frail body. Clutched tightly to her chest, even as she ate, was a threadbare brown teddy bear, worn out by time and constant use. The bear had a small patch on its right arm, a patch David knew all too well. He had clumsily sewn it himself on the night Ava tore the bear during a game. He could have bought another identical bear. He had plenty of money, but Ava insisted she wanted Mr. Hugs fixed, not replaced. David instinctively stepped back, hiding behind a column. His heart pounded violently in his chest. The diner's back door opened, and Emily the waitress emerged carrying another plate, covered by a napkin. "I brought a bit more fries," she whispered, crouching next to the girl. "Quick, before the manager sees." The girl lifted her gaze, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Emily. You can't stay here too long today. Bobby's in a bad mood and already asked about missing food." The little girl nodded, understanding her situation with a sadness far too heavy for her age. She set the plate on the ground for a moment, just to get a better grip on her teddy bear, never fully letting it go. Emily gently ruffled her hair before going back inside, casting a wary glance around to make sure no one had seen them. David watched in silence, a lump forming in his throat. It was a scene that shouldn't exist in a developed country. A child eating scraps next to the trash. He decided to approach. Maybe he could help somehow. Offer money so that the girl could have a decent meal, maybe even a place to stay. He took 2 steps toward the girl when she, and sensing his presence, turned around. The world stopped. The air left David's lungs. A buzzing sound filled his ears. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. The shape of her face, the tiny birthmark near her lip, the way she tilted her head slightly when looking up. It was impossible. It was a miracle. It was a nightmare. Right there, clinging to the same teddy bear he had bought for her 3rd birthday, was Ava, his daughter, missing for 2 years. Searched for in every state, in every city. Her face had been on posters, websites, TV broadcasts. Ava, whom the police had practically given up on finding. Ava, whose bedroom remained untouched in his mansion, like a shrine of hope. Ava, for whom he cried every night, when no one could see the once mighty David Walker torn to pieces. The girl did not recognize him. Her eyes showed only the natural wariness of a child facing a stranger. She quickly hugged her teddy bear tighter, her shield against the world, and stood, holding the now empty plate. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm leaving," she murmured, clearly accustomed to being chased away. David opened his mouth, but no sound emerged. He wanted to scream her name, run to her, hug her so tightly she would never vanish again. But shock paralyzed him, and a rational voice inside his mind warned, if he startled her, she might run away. He could lose her again. So, with a superhuman effort, he simply smiled and spoke gently. "It's all right, sweetheart. You're not bothering me." She looked at him in surprise. Adults were rarely kind, and then quickly disappeared down the alley beside the diner, clutching her teddy bear, almost tripping over her own feet in her rush to get away. David remained there, motionless for a long moment, his body trembling. Then, unsteadily, he returned to his car and sat behind the wheel, his hands gripping it so tightly his knuckles turned white. He needed to think rationally. He needed to be sure. How many 6-year-old girls had brown hair and big eyes? Could it be a cruel coincidence, his mind playing tricks, seeing his daughter in every child? But that teddy bear, Mr. Hugs, as Ava called him, with the patch on the right arm where she had torn it while playing, there couldn't be 2 identical bears with exactly the same patch. With shaking hands, David started the car and drove out of the lot. He circled the block slowly, looking for any sign of the girl, but she was gone. He headed to the hotel Debbie had recommended, checked in mechanically, and went up to the assigned room. Once alone, he collapsed onto the bed. His mind was a whirlwind. Could it really be her? If so, how had she ended up there? Who had left her in that condition? Where was she living? Why didn't she recognize him? David took out his wallet and pulled out the photo he always carried. Ava smiling, hugging the teddy bear on the last Christmas before her disappearance. He compared it mentally to the girl he had just seen. Even with the dirt, even with her messy hair, it was her, his Ava. He picked up his phone and hesitated. Call the local police. Wait, what if he was wrong? What if he alerted whoever was with her? She could disappear again. Better to observe first, confirm, set everything up carefully. David opened his laptop and began searching. Information on Pine Grove, the local social services system, custody laws, anything that might help. Then he typed an email to his lawyer, explaining the situation and requesting that he gather all necessary documents to prove Ava was his daughter. By 3 in the morning, he was still awake, sitting by the hotel window, staring at the deserted street. Somewhere in that small town, Ava was sleeping, probably hugging Mr. Hugs, as she always did. The only constant in the chaos her life had become. A tear slid down David's face. 2 years of a desperate search, offered rewards, hired detectives, a marriage broken under the pressure of loss, a business almost abandoned, and now, by a twist of fate, a blocked road, an unplanned stop, he had found what all his wealth and power had failed to retrieve. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, David already had a plan. He called his most trusted private detective and an old contact at the federal police. He explained the situation, asked for discretion but speed. Then he took a shower, changed clothes, and went downstairs for breakfast. He was determined not to lose sight of Ava again. If necessary, he would camp in front of that diner for the next 6 months. But he was sure it wouldn't come to that. Today, if all went well, he would get his daughter back. And as for whoever had taken her, well, David Walker hadn't built an empire by being lenient with those who wronged him. Once Ava was safe, there would be time for justice or vengeance. He straightened his suit jacket and left the hotel, walking toward the Sunshine Diner. His heart pounded with a strange mix of hope and fear. But one thing was certain. He would not go home without his daughter. The morning sun had barely risen in the sky when David Walker parked in front of the Sunshine Diner. This time, however, he wasn't alone. 3 unmarked police cars, unmistakable to a keen eye, stopped right behind him. David had spent the entire night making phone calls. His lawyer emailed all the necessary documents: Ava's birth certificate, photographs, the missing person report, newspaper articles from that time. A friendship with a senator and the right contacts in the federal police sped up the process that would usually take days. No one wanted to be responsible for delaying a father's reunion with his missing child. "Remember," David told Detective Carter, who was leading the operation, "we need to be careful. She may be frightened, confused. I don't want anyone traumatizing her further." Carter nodded. With 20 years of service, specializing in missing children's cases, he understood the delicacy of the situation. "We'll let you make the initial contact. We'll be here for support if needed," the detective replied. The other 2 officers stayed near their cars while David and Carter headed to the diner entrance. From inside, David could see that the place was busier than the previous night. Workers grabbing breakfast before their shift, a few tourists passing through town. Emily, the waitress, was serving a table near the window. When she saw David, something changed in her expression. A brief flicker of recognition followed by worry. "She hasn't shown up yet," David said quietly to Carter. "Usually, at what time does this waitress feed the girl?" "Let's ask her directly," Carter replied. "The sooner we clarify this, the better." They walked into the diner. The bell above the door announced their arrival, drawing several customers' eyes. Emily froze for a second, then continued her work, avoiding looking at them. David and Carter sat at a table near the back door. Emily approached, visibly nervous. "Good morning. What can I get you?" she asked, her pencil trembling slightly in her hand. "Emily, we need to talk about the little girl," David said directly but quietly. "The one you feed out back." Her face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, quickly glancing toward the kitchen. Carter discreetly showed his badge. "You're not in trouble, ma'am. In fact, we need your help." Emily looked like she was about to cry. "Please, I was just trying to help. She's just a child and she was starving." "We know," David interrupted gently, "and it's admirable what you did. But that girl, she's my daughter." Emily's eyes widened. "Your daughter?" David took an enlarged copy of the missing person flyer from his folder. It showed Ava smiling, hugging her teddy bear, the same one she still carried. "She disappeared 2 years ago. I've been searching the entire country ever since." Emily looked at the photo, then back at David, finally noticing the resemblance, the eyes, the shape of the face. "My God," she whispered. "I never imagined. She never mentioned her parents. She only said she lived with an elderly woman who passed away. At that moment, the back door opened, and Ava timidly entered the diner. As always, her teddy bear was tightly clutched against her chest. Her eyes quickly found Emily, then noticed David and the detective. She froze, clearly considering running away. Emily made a subtle gesture for her to come closer. "It's okay, sweetie. These gentlemen want to speak with you." Ava approached hesitantly, squeezing her teddy bear even tighter. "Hello," Carter said kindly. "What's your name?" The girl looked at Emily as if asking permission to answer. "Go ahead," Emily encouraged her. "Lucy," the girl whispered, "but Mr. Huggs sometimes calls me Ava." David's heart pounded. She still remembered her real name, even if only as something the teddy bear told her. David leaned forward slightly, keeping his distance so as not to scare her. "Hi, Ava. My name is David." "I'm not Ava," she protested faintly. "I'm Lucy." "That teddy bear," David said, pointing gently. "He has a special name, doesn't he?" The girl nodded. "Mr. Huggs, and he has a patch on his right arm, right?" The girl's eyes widened. "How do you know?" "Because I fixed it when you tore it during a game," David replied, his voice breaking slightly. Just then, the two uniformed officers entered the diner. Ava, seeing them, ran behind Emily, clinging to her legs. "She's my friend, I don't want to go," she cried in fear. Emily placed a comforting hand on the girl's hair. "Shh, it's okay." David motioned for the officers to step back. They understood and went outside. Carter remained but moved away a bit, giving them space. Moving slowly, David approached and knelt down to Ava's level. "I've been looking for you for a long time," he said softly, tears in his eyes. He took out his wallet and showed her an old photo. In it, a younger Ava, about 4 years old, smiled, hugging the same teddy bear she clutched now. "Look, that was you," he said, holding out the photo. The girl stared at it for a long moment. Confusion and interest flickered in her eyes. She looked at the teddy bear in her arms, then at the photo, then back at David. "Why do you have a picture of me?" she finally asked. "Because I'm your father, Ava. I'm your dad, and I've never, ever stopped looking for you." The diner had gone quiet. Every customer, the cook peeking through the kitchen window, everyone was watching with a mix of astonishment and emotion. Emily gently suggested, "Let's talk somewhere more private. We can use the staff room." David nodded gratefully. Carter, David, and Emily, with Ava still clinging to the waitress, walked to the small employee break room. There was a round table and some old chairs. Once seated, David waited for Ava to calm down before trying again. "Do you remember anything, Ava, about your home? Your life before?" The girl hugged her teddy bear even tighter, as if seeking courage from it. "I don't remember much," she finally said. "There was an old lady who took care of me. She called me Lucy, but Mr. Huggs always called me Ava." "What happened to that lady?" Carter asked gently. "She fell asleep and never woke up?" Ava answered simply. "I was alone in the house for a few days, but then a man came and said I couldn't stay there. I ran away because I was scared. She's been coming to the diner since then," Emily added. "I saw her rummaging through the trash about 3 weeks ago. I started setting aside food for her. I couldn't let her go hungry." David hesitantly reached out, as if to touch Ava's cheek, but stopped halfway. "May I?" he asked. The girl didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. David gently touched her cheek, moving a strand of hair away from her face. "Your mother had the same eyes," he said quietly. "Every day I looked at your picture and prayed to find you. And now, here you are." "Are you going to take me away?" Ava asked, her voice small. "I'm taking you home," David replied. "Back to your room, with all your toys. Mr. Huggs will be happy to go back there." Something flickered in Ava's eyes, maybe a distant memory, or maybe just the desire for a safe place to call home. She looked at Emily, still unsure. "Can Emily visit us?" she asked. "Of course she can," David said, looking gratefully at the waitress. "She's always welcome." Emily smiled through the tears now streaming down her face. "You'll be okay, sweetie," she told the girl. "Your dad came for you. It's a miracle." A miracle, David thought. After 2 years of nightmares, An unexpected miracle at a roadside diner. The sun was high in the sky when David and Ava left the diner. A small crowd that had gathered outside watched the scene with curiosity and emotion. Some people even clapped, not fully understanding what was happening. Emily walked them to the sidewalk to say goodbye, discreetly wiping away tears with her apron. "I'll come visit you," she promised, hugging Ava one last time. "And when you're back home, far from here, you can call me any time." Ava nodded, still clutching her teddy bear as if it were her only certainty in a world changing far too fast. David gently placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, guiding her to the car. "First, let's go to the mall to buy you some clothes," he explained, opening the passenger door. Ava looked at the luxurious car with hesitation. "It's really nice," she said, sounding intimidated. "It's just a car," David replied with a smile. "Come on, I'll help you with the seatbelt." During the drive, David kept glancing at Ava from the corner of his eye. She remained quiet, gazing out the window, occasionally whispering something to Mr. Huggs. So small, so fragile, yet somehow so strong. 2 years living God knows how, and she still had that special spark in her eyes. The neighboring town's mall wasn't huge, but it had enough for immediate needs. David parked and took Ava's hand, which she didn't resist. "What are we buying?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. "Everything you need. Clothes, shoes, a comfy pajama. Maybe a toy if you'd like." Ava's eyes lit up briefly at the mention of toys, but she didn't ask for anything. David realized she had probably forgotten how to ask, to want, to hope for good things. At the first children's clothing store, the sales assistant looked curiously at Ava in her oversized, dirty clothes, hugging a worn teddy bear. Noticing this discomfort, David quickly explained, "We're traveling and our luggage got lost. We need a complete wardrobe for my daughter." The sales assistant immediately shifted into professional mode, bringing out dresses, tops, shorts, socks, all in cheerful colors. Ava looked at the items with admiration and a bit of confusion. "Can I choose?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Of course," David said. "Pick whatever you like best." Slowly, Ava began pointing to a few pieces: a light blue dress, a t-shirt with stars, pink shorts. Her choices were modest, as if she feared asking for too much. Discreetly, David added more items, ensuring she had everything she needed. In the shoe section, Ava chose a pair of purple sneakers that lit up when she walked. For the first time since they'd been reunited, a genuine smile lit up her face when she tried them on, taking a few steps to see the flashing lights. "Look, Mr. Huggs," she exclaimed to the teddy bear. "Magic shoes." David felt his heart fill with emotion. He wanted to say so much, ask so much, but he held back. There would be time for everything. For now, the important thing was to make her feel safe. After buying enough clothes for several weeks, they stopped by the food court. Ava looked wide-eyed at all the options. "What do you want to eat?" David asked. She hesitated, looking at the many restaurants. Can I have fries?" "You can have whatever you want," he replied, leading her to a fast food counter where he ordered a kids combo with fries, chicken nuggets, and a chocolate milkshake. Ava ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a precious treasure. David watched as she discreetly offered one fry to Mr. Huggs, placing it near the bear's nose before eating it herself. "Is he hungry too?" David asked softly. Ava nodded. "He always takes care of me. Now I take care of him." After lunch, they visited a toy store. David told her she could pick a present. After wandering the aisles in awe, Ava chose a small toy doctor kit. "It's to take care of Mr. Huggs when he's hurt," she explained seriously. By late afternoon, they returned to the hotel. David had changed his single room for a suite with 2 bedrooms so Ava could have her own space. The receptionist, noticing the girl with the worn teddy bear, smiled and handed her a small complimentary pack of cookies. In the suite, David organized the bags while Ava timidly explored the room. "You can take a bath now," he suggested. "Then we can order dinner." Ava looked at the luxurious bathroom with its gleaming tiles and large tub. "Can I fill the tub?" "Of course, I'll help you." David filled the tub with warm water, adding the kids' bubble bath they'd bought. A layer of fragrant foam formed on the surface. Ava watched in wonder. "What about Mr. Huggs?" He can stay out here taking care of your new clothes, David suggested. Ava seemed to consider that for a moment, then nodded and carefully placed the teddy bear on the bed. It was the first time she had set him aside since David found her. "I'll be right back, Mr. Hugs," she whispered to the toy. The bath was long and relaxing. David helped wash Ava's hair, gently detangling knots that had likely been ignored for a long time. Then he wrapped her in a fluffy towel and let her choose which pajamas she wanted to wear. She chose one with stars and a moon on it. While Ava got dressed, David ordered room service, tomato soup, sandwiches, and a chocolate dessert. They ate while watching a cartoon on the TV. Gradually, Ava's small body showed signs of weariness. Her eyes grew heavy, and she yawned frequently. "I think it's bedtime," David said, gently moving a damp strand of hair from her face. He guided her to the smaller bedroom in the suite, where he had put away her new clothes in the closet and placed Mr. Hugs on the pillow. Ava climbed onto the bed and immediately hugged the bear. "Is it comfy?" David asked, tucking the blankets around her. Ava nodded, sinking into the soft pillow. "The bed is warm. I'll leave the bathroom light on and the door cracked open in case you need anything during the night. I'll be in the other room, right there." Ava looked at him for a moment, her big eyes reflecting the soft glow of the bedside lamp. "Are you really my dad?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. David felt a lump in his throat. "Yes, Ava. I'm your dad, and I've spent every day of the last 2 years searching for you." She seemed to ponder that, hugging her teddy bear tighter. "Good night, Dad." "Good night, my little one," he replied, leaning down to kiss her forehead. At the doorway, David stopped and looked back. Ava was already drifting off, her eyes closing heavily. For the first time in years, she would sleep in a clean, warm bed with a full stomach, clean clothes, and the safety of knowing she was no longer alone in the world. In the dark hallway, David finally allowed his tears to fall, tears of relief, happiness, and hope. Tomorrow would be another day, the start of a new life for both of them. The golden morning light streamed through the curtains as Ava opened her eyes. For a moment, she felt confused by the unfamiliar surroundings, the white ceiling, the soft sheets, the hum of the air conditioner. Then it all came back to her. The man who claimed to be her father, the shopping trip, the warm bath, the comfortable bed. Instinctively, she pulled Mr. Hugs close to her chest. The teddy bear, with its patch on the right arm, was the only constant in her life for the past years. "Good morning, Mr. Hugs," she whispered, as she did every morning. "I guess it wasn't a dream." She heard movement in the next room. Sitting up, still clutching the bear, she waited. Soon David appeared in the doorway, already dressed. "Good morning, Ava," he smiled. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded shyly. "The bed is really soft. Breakfast is served in the sitting area. After that, we need to go back to the diner to say goodbye to Emily. Today, we're going home." Home. The word sounded strange to Ava. For the last few years, home had been a series of temporary places. The old lady's apartment, improvised shelters, hidden corners of the city, never anything permanent, never anything truly hers. After breakfast, Ava put on her new blue dress and the light-up sneakers. David helped comb her now clean, shiny hair. She looked like a different child, nothing like the disheveled girl who ate in secret behind the diner. On the way back to the Sunshine Diner, Ava watched the small town through the car window, seeing it from a new perspective. She was no longer a lost child, she was just passing through. "Will Emily be sad?" she asked suddenly. David, surprised by the question, answered carefully, "She'll miss you, for sure, but she'll be happy knowing you're going home, with your family." The diner was busy when they arrived. Emily was serving customers with her usual efficiency, but her face lit up when she saw Ava walk in. She quickly handed off an order and approached them. "Just look at you," she exclaimed, admiring the child's transformation. "You look so beautiful." Ava grinned, pointing at her shoes. "Look, they flash when I walk." Emily crouched down to see better, making an exaggerated show of admiration, while Ava bounced on her toes to show off the lights. Then the waitress looked at David, a silent question in her eyes. "We came to say goodbye," he explained. "It's time to take Ava home." Emily nodded, understanding. Despite the sadness in her eyes, there was also relief, knowing the girl was safe and had a real chance at life. "Debbie," she called to the cook, "can you cover my tables for a minute?" The gray-haired woman waved a hand from the kitchen, and Emily led David and Ava to the same back room where they had talked the previous day. Once alone, Emily knelt in front of Ava. "I'm going to miss you so much, sweet girl," she said, holding the girl's little hands. "Me too," Ava replied, her voice thick with emotion. "For you were nice to me, and to Mr. Hugs." Emily smiled, gently touching the teddy bear's nose. "Mr. Hugs, make sure you take good care of her on the trip, okay?" David watched, deeply moved. After a moment, he stepped forward. "Emily, I'll never forget what you did, feeding a child you didn't know, risking your job. Not many people would do that." "I only did what anyone should do," she said modestly. "But now it's time for her to go home," David added. "To her real home." Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. She opened her arms, and Ava threw herself into a tight hug. The little girl buried her face in the waitress's shoulder, taking in for the last time her familiar scent of coffee and cheap perfume. "Be happy, Ava," Emily whispered. "And remember, there are always good people in the world." When they finally pulled apart, Emily discreetly wiped a tear. David handed her a business card. "My personal number and address. Call anytime you want to visit. You'll always be welcome." Emily took the card and carefully tucked it into her apron pocket. She walked them to the diner's door, where several curious customers watched. Some even clapped, having heard rumors of the incredible reunion story. In the car, Ava looked one last time at the diner and at Emily waving from the sidewalk. Then she hugged Mr. Hugs tighter and turned to face forward. "We're going home, Mr. Hugs," she said softly. "Our real home." David started the engine, pulling away from Pine Grove and its residents. Ahead lay miles of highway and the beginning of a new life. The drive took almost 6 hours. David drove carefully, occasionally checking on Ava, who alternated between dozing and long periods gazing at the landscape. Mr. Hugs remained firm in her arms, like a silent guardian of her secrets and fears. They stopped a few times to use the restroom, grab a snack, stretch their legs. Each time, David noted that Ava became more comfortable in his presence. There still wasn't the natural closeness of father and daughter, but tiny threads of reconnection were weaving themselves. During a break at a roadside cafe while eating sandwiches, Ava looked at David curiously. "Is our house big?" she asked, chewing slowly. David hesitated. How did he explain to a child who'd been living on the streets that she was going back to a 20-room mansion? "Yes, it's pretty spacious," he finally said. "You'll have lots of room to play." Ava nodded, thoughtful. "Are there other kids there?" Another tricky question, how to explain the half-brother she didn't know existed. "There's a baby," he said cautiously. "Your brother. His name is Thomas, and he's almost 2. Ava's eyes widened. "I have a brother." "Yes. He was born after you, after we were separated." The girl seemed to process this slowly, clutching Mr. Hugs to her chest. "Will he like me?" she asked in a small voice. David felt a twinge in his heart. "He'll love you, Ava. Everyone will." The question about everyone hung in the air, but Ava didn't press further. They finished their meal in silence and got back on the road. "Does Rachel still live with us?" Ava asked suddenly, startling David. He almost slammed the brakes in shock. You remember Rachel?" Ava looked at Mr. Hugs as if he had spoken. "Mr. Hugs remembers a bit." David chose his words carefully. "Yes, Rachel still lives with us. She's my wife and your little brother's mother." Ava said nothing else, just squeezed the teddy bear tighter and turned to look out the window again. David noticed her small fingers nervously stroking the patch on Mr. Hugs's arm, a gesture that seemed automatic, as if it soothed her. The rest of the journey went by in relative silence. Ava fell asleep in the back seat. Still clutching the teddy bear, David watched her in the rearview mirror, torn between awe and anguish. How was it possible she was here after so long? And what had really happened during those 2 years? By the time they reached the outskirts of the city where they lived, the sun was beginning to set. City lights flickered on one by one, and traffic grew heavier. Ava woke to the urban noise and shrank back into the seat, clearly uncomfortable with the commotion after so much time in a quieter town. "We're almost there," David assured her. "Our house is in a quieter area, away from all this noise." And indeed it was. About 20 minutes later, driving through tree-lined streets in an exclusive neighborhood, they passed through a large wrought-iron gate. The Walker property, with its extensive gardens and imposing house at the center, appeared before them like something from another world. David watched Ava's reaction in the rearview mirror. She stared wide-eyed, her mouth slightly open in wonder. She looked from the house to Mr. Huggs, as if checking with the bear to confirm it was real. "We're here," David announced, parking in front of the main entrance. They got out of the car slowly. Ava held the teddy bear in one hand and gripped David's hand with the other. Her eyes roamed over the manicured gardens, the marble fountain, and the large windows reflecting the sunset glow. For a moment, it seemed she recognized the place, but then the expression faded, replaced by apprehension. "It's so big," she whispered, squeezing David's hand. "You'll get used to it," he said with an encouraging smile. "There are lots of fun spots to play in." The huge oak door opened before they reached the steps. A woman of around 35, with impeccably styled dark hair and wearing an elegant outfit, appeared in the doorway. Her face held a carefully composed smile, though her eyes showed tension. "You did it," she said to David, her voice controlled. "You actually found her." David nodded, gently squeezing Ava's hand. "Rachel, look who's come home." The woman stepped forward, kneeling to Ava's height. "Hello, Ava. It's good to have you back." Something in her tone was off, an excessive formality, like she was greeting an unwelcome guest rather than a stepdaughter lost for 2 years. David noticed, but attributed it to the tension of the situation. Ava stood still, staring at Rachel with growing unease. Her small body began trembling slightly, and she tightened her grip on David's hand with surprising strength. Then something unexpected happened. A hot liquid trickled down Ava's leg, forming a puddle on the marble floor. She had wet herself, something that hadn't happened once on the journey. But the most shocking was her next reaction. Ava let go of David's hand, backed away several steps, and pointed at Rachel, her eyes filled with terror. "You're mean!" she screamed, her high voice loaded with fear. "You're mean! Mean!" Rachel paled, standing up quickly. David was momentarily paralyzed, torn between comforting Ava and understanding what was happening. "Ava, sweetheart," Rachel tried, her smile faltering. "You must be confused. It's me, Rachel." "No!" Ava screamed even louder, backing up until she bumped into David's legs. Mr. Huggs was now pressed against her face, as though she were trying to hide behind him. A heavy silence fell. David felt his heart clench at the terror on his daughter's face. Rachel let out a nervous laugh, a forced, tense sound. "David, Ginn, obviously she's traumatized by everything she's been through. She's mixing things up." David knelt down and pulled Ava into a protective hug. The child trembled like a leaf in the wind, her eyes fixed on Rachel with a disturbing mix of terror and anger, unusual for a 6-year-old. "She's been through a lot," David said, his voice tense. "We need to be patient." In truth, Ava's reaction deeply disturbed him. Children are often good judges of character, and this visceral response didn't feel like confusion or general trauma. It was specific, directed, as if Rachel posed a real threat. "Let's go inside," he continued, lifting Ava into his arms. "She needs dry clothes and some time to calm down." Rachel nodded, clearly shaken, stepping aside to let them pass. A housekeeper appeared discreetly in the hall, likely alerted by the commotion. "Martha, please prepare a warm bath in Ava's bathroom," David instructed. "And bring clean towels." "Yes, sir," she said, casting a curious glance at the trembling child in David's arms before hurrying off. "Should I call a doctor?" Rachel asked, keeping her distance. "Maybe she needs sedatives or something." David frowned. "Sedatives? She's a child, Rachel, not a wild animal. She just needs time to adjust." Rachel raised her hands defensively. "I'm only trying to help. I don't want her to suffer." There was a hint of insincerity in her words that David couldn't ignore. Or maybe he was imagining it, fueled by Ava's inexplicable reaction. "I'll take her upstairs," he said, ending the conversation. Rachel remained in the hall while David carried Ava up the stairs. The girl kept her face buried against his neck, still trembling, still gripping Mr. Huggs like her life depended on it. "Don't let her get me," Ava whispered. "Please, Dad, don't let her." Her words cut into David like a blade. "Nobody's going to take you, Ava. I'm here now." "I'm here." They reached the second floor and walked down a long corridor to a white door painted with small, colorful flowers. David paused, taking a deep breath. "Your room," he said softly. "It's just like you left it." He opened the door to reveal a spacious, bright bedroom. The walls were a soft shade of blue. The canopy bed covered by a star-patterned quilt, shelves filled with books and toys, a dollhouse in the corner. Everything remained intact, as though waiting for her. Even the wall calendar still marked the date of her disappearance. David had insisted on preserving it, even when detectives suggested it would be better to move on, even when Rachel argued that seeing the empty room every day only increased his pain. He had kept everything exactly as it was, even the calendar. Gently, David set Ava down. She looked around, her eyes taking in every detail of the room. For a moment, fear gave way to curiosity, then recognition. "I remember," she murmured, taking a few tentative steps toward the bed. "I remember my toys." She approached a shelf where various stuffed animals were lined up. She touched a pink plush rabbit reverently, then a long-necked giraffe. "They waited for me," she said, turning to David with tears in her eyes. "Every single day," he confirmed, his voice thick with emotion, "just like I did." Martha entered then, announcing the bath was ready. David thanked her and asked for a few minutes alone with Ava. When they were alone again, he sat on the edge of the bed, watching as his daughter rediscovered her space. She walked around carefully, touching objects as if to confirm they were real. "Ava," he called gently, "can we talk about what happened downstairs?" The girl froze, fear returning to her eyes. She ran to David and clung to his legs. "I'm scared," she confessed, "but I can't explain. That woman scares me." David stroked her hair, deep in thought. Something was very wrong here, but he didn't want to push Ava, not now when she was still so fragile and scared. "It's all right," he assured her. "You're safe now." After her bath and a change into clean clothes, David left Ava to explore her room while he went to speak with Rachel. He found her in the living room, a glass of whiskey in her hand, her face tense. "How is she?" Rachel asked when she saw him. "Confused? Frightened?" David paused, choosing his words. "Rachel, that reaction, it wasn't normal." Rachel took a long sip of her drink. "She's been through a massive trauma, David. Children create all kinds of stories to cope with things they can't understand. You know that." "Yes, but think about it," Rachel interrupted. "She was living on the streets, probably saw horrible things. Who knows what's in her head when she sees me? Maybe I remind her of someone who hurt her." The explanation made sense. Rachel had always been rational, practical. It was one of the traits David had admired in her, especially during the dark months after Ava disappeared, when he nearly lost his mind with grief. "Where's Thomas?" he asked, changing the subject. "With the nanny. I thought it best not to overwhelm her with too many people at once." "That's sensible," David agreed. "I'll go back and check on her. I'll order dinner in about half an hour." Rachel nodded, but before David left, she asked, "Did she say anything about what happened, about who took her?" There was a strange urgency in her voice that David couldn't decipher. "Not yet. It's too soon." Back in Ava's room, David found her sitting on the floor, surrounded by old toys. She seemed calmer now, talking quietly to Mr. Huggs while arranging dolls in a circle. "Are you all right?" he asked, sitting on the floor beside her. Ava nodded, but her eyes betrayed an internal storm. "Dad," she said after a pause, testing the word as if tasting it. "Why does she seem different now?" David frowned, confused. "Different how?" "More fake," Ava said, searching for the right word. "She smiles, but her eyes don't smile." It was a surprisingly perceptive observation for a 6-year-old, and exactly what David had noticed as well, though he hadn't put it into words. "Sometimes when people are nervous, they look different," he explained, trying to be fair. Rachel is happy you're back, but also worried about how you're feeling. Ava didn't seem convinced. She hugged Mr. Huggs tighter, whispering something in his plush ear. "What did Mr. Huggs say?" David asked gently. "He said he's scared of her too," Ava replied, her voice almost inaudible. A chill ran down David's spine. He knew the teddy bear was merely a channel for Ava's own thoughts and feelings, but there was something unsettlingly genuine about her statement. "We'll have dinner soon," he said, changing the subject. "But if you prefer, we can eat right here in your room." Ava's eyes lit up at that suggestion. "Can we eat here? Like a picnic?" "Just like a picnic," David smiled. "Just you, me, and Mr. Huggs." The relief on Ava's face was palpable. She clearly didn't want to face Rachel again, at least not yet. David ordered dinner to the room: tomato soup, grilled cheese sandwiches, and chocolate pudding for dessert. They ate seated on the floor, using a large napkin as their picnic blanket. Ava even set aside a small piece of her sandwich for Mr. Huggs, carefully placing it near his plush nose. During the meal, David watched Ava relax more and more. She even smiled a few times, a genuine smile that lit her eyes. Perhaps things could return to normal after all. Perhaps time would heal the wounds that troubled her. After dinner, David helped Ava get ready for bed, brushing her teeth, combing her hair, helping her into one of the new pajamas they'd bought, the one printed with stars and moons, matching the room decor. "Want me to tell you a story?" he offered, tucking the blankets around her. Ava nodded enthusiastically, hugging Mr. Huggs. "The one about the bunny who wanted to reach the moon." David smiled, touched that she remembered. It had been her favorite story before she disappeared, one he'd made up just for her. "Once upon a time," he began, "there was a little bunny who looked up at the sky every night." By the time he finished, Ava was almost asleep. David kissed her forehead softly. "Good night, my little one." "Good night, Dad," she murmured, half asleep. "Mr. Huggs says he's happy we're home?" "I am too," David replied, choking back emotion. He left the door ajar and a soft light on in the hallway, in case she woke up disoriented during the night. Then he headed to his own room, physically and emotionally drained. Rachel was already in bed, supposedly reading a book, or pretending to read, as her eyes remained still on the page. "She's asleep?" she asked without looking up. "Yes," David replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Rachel, we need to talk about her reaction." Rachel closed the book with a sigh. "David, she's been through tremendous trauma. She needs time, maybe therapy. It's normal for her to be confused, frightened." "It's not just that," he insisted. "There's something specific about you that terrifies her. And I can't understand why. Maybe I remind her of someone," Rachel repeated. "Or maybe she's jealous. She comes back and finds another woman in her mother's place, and a brother who has all your attention." The explanation made sense, yet it still didn't seem enough to justify the terror in Ava's eyes. "Let's just give it time," Rachel concluded, touching David's arm. "She'll get used to me again. Everything will go back to normal." Later, while Rachel slept, David lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Through the partially open door, he could hear Ava's soft breathing in the adjacent room. His daughter, finally home. A miracle he had prayed for daily over 2 long years, but instead of pure relief, he felt growing unease. Ava's words, "You're mean," echoed in his mind, along with her comments about Rachel seeming fake, her eyes not matching her smile. Children are intuitive, David thought. They sense things adults often overlook. Silently, he got up and went to Ava's room. She slept peacefully, hugging Mr. Huggs. Her face wore a calm expression he hadn't seen since finding her. Perhaps, away from Rachel, she felt truly safe. "I'll find out what's going on," he whispered. "I'll protect you, no matter who from." Watching his daughter sleep, David knew he would do anything to keep her safe, even if that meant questioning everything and everyone around him, including his own wife. 3 days passed since Ava's arrival at the mansion. 3 days during which she barely left her room, preferring the safety of that familiar space to being around Rachel. She ate her meals there, played there, and only ventured into the garden when she was sure her stepmother wasn't nearby. David split his time between work, unavoidable even now, and caring for his newly returned daughter. He slept little, worried about how Ava was adjusting. The child therapist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, was set to begin sessions the following week, but until then, he navigated blindly through the turbulent waters of childhood trauma. On the morning of the fourth day, while having breakfast with David on a small terrace adjoining her room, Ava asked an unexpected question. "Can I meet my brother today?" David nearly choked on his orange juice. Until then, Ava had shown little interest in the baby, keeping her distance from anything related to the life David had built during her absence. "So of course," he answered, trying not to sound too excited. "Thomas usually plays in the playroom after breakfast. We can go see him whenever you'd like." Ava nodded thoughtfully, holding Mr. Hugs against her chest as she always did when nervous. "Do you think he'll like Mr. Hugs?" "I'm sure he will," David smiled. "Thomas loves stuffed animals." An hour later, father and daughter walked hand in hand down the hallway leading to the west wing of the mansion, where the playroom was located. Ava was visibly tense, her steps hesitant. "What if he doesn't like me?" she whispered. "That's impossible," David replied confidently. "You're the coolest big sister ever." They reached the playroom door and David crouched to Ava's eye level. "Ready?" She took a deep breath and nodded. David opened the door, revealing a colorful room filled with toys. In the center, on a large padded mat, was Thomas, a sturdy boy of almost 2, with dark hair like Rachel's and bright blue eyes. The nanny, a middle-aged woman named Nancy, supervised his play. Thomas looked up, curious when they entered. For a moment, he stared at Ava with that serious scrutiny only toddlers have. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a wide smile, showing baby teeth. "Hi, Thomas," David said softly. "David, this is your sister, Ava." The boy babbled incomprehensibly but clearly excited, extending one of his colorful blocks toward Ava. The girl looked at David, who nodded encouragingly. Then, still clutching Mr. Hugs, Ava approached slowly and sat on the mat next to her brother. "Hi, Thomas," she said timidly. "I'm Ava, and this is Mr. Hugs." Thomas immediately showed interest in the teddy bear, reaching out with chubby hands to touch it. Ava hesitated, but then, to David's surprise, she held the bear out for him to inspect. "You can hold him, but be gentle. He's very old." Thomas handled the worn teddy with a surprising reverence for a toddler, touching the patch on its arm curiously, then handing it back to Ava. He picked up one of his own teddy bears and offered it to her. "Looks like he wants to share," Nancy said, smiling. "That's Mr. Bubbles, his favorite." Ava accepted the small blue teddy, examining it as carefully as Thomas had examined Mr. Hugs. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face like a sunbeam after a long storm. "Can I play with you, Thomas?" she asked. The boy responded with a cheerful giggle, pushing more blocks toward her. David felt a lump in his throat. For the first time since their reunion, he saw Ava genuinely relax, acting like a normal 6-year-old. With Thomas, there were no layers of trauma or distrust, just a simple, pure sibling bond. Quietly, he signaled to Nancy, who understood and left the room, letting him watch his children interact. Ava was already building a tower with the blocks, patiently explaining to Thomas what she was doing. He watched, fascinated, occasionally trying to help, more often knocking down what she'd built, which, surprisingly, made Ava laugh instead of getting upset. That's how Rachel found them half an hour later. She paused in the doorway, her expression impossible to read. There was surprise, certainly, but also something else. Worry, discomfort. "I didn't know you were here," she said, her voice controlled. Immediately, Ava's posture changed. The spontaneity vanished, replaced by that familiar tension. She clutched Mr. Hugs again like a shield. "Ava wanted to meet Thomas," David explained, trying to keep his tone light. "They're getting along really well?" Rachel forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That's wonderful. Thomas could really use the influence of a big sister." She lingered in the doorway, silently watching. Thomas, oblivious to the tension, kept playing, glancing at Ava, who now seemed torn between wanting to continue their game and wanting to flee Rachel's presence. Noticing his daughter's dilemma, David intervened. "Rachel, could you check with Martha about lunchtime? I was thinking of taking the kids for a picnic in the garden afterward." It was a transparent excuse to get her to leave, but Rachel simply nodded and left without argument. As soon as she was gone, Ava visibly relaxed. "She doesn't like me playing with him," she whispered to Mr. Huggs, but loud enough for David to hear. "Of course she does," he replied automatically, though part of him wondered if there was some truth in Ava's words. In the following days, a routine emerged. Every morning after breakfast, Ava visited Thomas in the playroom. Their bond grew daily. She told him made-up stories, helped him with simple puzzles, sang lullabies David never knew she remembered. Thomas, for his part, adored his sister. His eyes lit up whenever she walked in, and he had even learned to say a rough version of her name. Ava came out as Abba, but the intention was clear. Rachel watched all this from a distance, always silent. When David asked why she seemed reserved, she gave vague excuses. She was busy with an upcoming charity event, worried about a slump in the shares of a company they'd acquired, needing space to process so many changes. But her eyes never left Ava when they were in the same room, especially when the girl interacted with Thomas. There was something in that gaze that unsettled David, not exactly jealousy, but something more complex, something like fear. Doctor. Sarah Mitchell's office had soft green walls, large windows letting in natural light, and a small fountain that produced a soothing trickle of water. Colorful cushions lay scattered on the floor, along with a sandbox filled with miniatures and shelves of carefully arranged books and toys. It was a space designed to make children feel safe and comfortable. Ava walked in, clutching David's hand, with Mr. Huggs held tightly to her chest. Her eyes swept the room warily, scanning every detail as though searching for hidden threats, a habit developed during her years away. "Hello, Ava," Dr. Mitchell said, a woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and a gentle smile. "I'm very happy to meet you and Mr. Huggs." Ava didn't reply, only held the teddy closer. "I'll wait outside," David said, crouching to Ava's eye level. "Dr. Sarah just wants to talk a bit. I'll be right here if you need me." A brief panic flitted across Ava's face. "Mr. Huggs can stay with me." "Of course he can," the therapist answered before David could. "In fact, I was hoping to meet him too. I hear he's very special." The strategy worked. Ava looked at the bear as if consulting him, then nodded slightly. "He says it's okay." David kissed his daughter's forehead and left, his heart tight with a mix of hope and anxiety. Dr. Mitchell came highly recommended, specializing in childhood trauma. If anyone could help Ava process whatever happened, it was her. In the waiting room, he flipped through magazines without really seeing them, his mind on the personal drama unfolding in his life. Ava's relationship with Thomas continued to blossom. During those moments, she acted like a normal 6-year-old. With Rachel, however, the tension persisted, maybe even worsened. Ava avoided being alone with her stepmother at all costs and had nightmares almost every night. When the office door finally opened an hour later, David sprang up, relieved to see Dr. Mitchell's calm expression. "How did it go?" he asked, as Ava ran to hug his legs. "It was a good start," the therapist said. "Ava is very smart and perceptive. Could we talk in private for a moment?" He nodded, then turned to his daughter. "Ava, how about you color for a bit while I talk to Dr. Sarah? There's a little drawing table right there." Ava didn't look thrilled, but she agreed, taking Mr. Huggs with her to the small child-sized table. "In the adjoining office, yeah, Doctor." Mitchell closed the door and gestured for David to take a seat. "Mr. Walker, I'll be direct. Ava has been through significant trauma. Children her age usually can't hide or fully repress traumatic events, but they also can't process them like adults." "Did she talk about what happened?" "Not directly. Today was mostly therapeutic play. She set up several scenes in the sandbox. One of a girl separated from her family, an adult female figure who took her away, a strange house where she felt sad." David felt his blood turn cold. A female figure. Did she say who it was? Dr. Mitchell shook her head. "No, and I didn't want to push her on the first session, but I'm especially interested in her connection to the teddy bear." "Mr. Huggs," She never lets go of him. Exactly. He seems to function as a particularly powerful transitional object. Ava talks to him constantly, gives him opinions and memories. It's like part of her traumatic memory is displaced onto the bear. David frowned, trying to understand. You're saying Mr. Hugs knows things she can't consciously remember. In simple terms, yes, it's a fascinating defense mechanism. The teddy bear represents a piece of her that holds painful memories, allowing her conscious mind some distance from the trauma. The therapist paused. Mr. Walker, I need to ask, was there any conflict between Ava and your wife before the disappearance? Anything that might explain her extremely negative reaction now? The question took David by surprise. He ran a hand through his hair, thinking, not that I recall. Rachel and Ava seemed fine, at least on the surface. Rachel had little experience with kids, but she was trying. We were all still adjusting. I see. Let's continue sessions twice a week, as planned. Over time, Ava should be able to express more of what she went through. In the following weeks, Ava's routine included regular visits to Dr. Mitchell. Gradually, the girl began to enjoy the sessions, even asking when her next one would be. The therapist used various techniques, drawings, adapted fairy tales, music, role-playing games, all designed to help Ava process her feelings in a safe environment. After the fourth session, Dr. Mitchell showed David a drawing Ava had made, a small house with a dark-haired adult figure outside, turning her back on a crying little girl inside the house. She said this was the old lady's house, where she stayed after being taken, the therapist explained. When I asked who the dark-haired woman was, she said she didn't know the name, just that it was the person who didn't want her anymore. David studied the drawing, feeling a chill down his spine. The dark hair, drawn with thick, angry lines, inevitably reminded him of Rachel. But it could be any dark-haired woman, he reminded himself. He couldn't jump to conclusions. She's starting to trust enough to talk about what happened, Dr. Mitchell continued. It's a slow process, Meb, but we're making progress. At home, David noticed small changes in Ava. She seemed more centered, less prone to startling and panic attacks. Her nightmares grew less frequent, and although she still avoided Rachel, she no longer showed pure terror in her presence. One night, while tucking her into bed, Ava surprised David with a question. Dad, Dr. Sarah said it wasn't my fault. What wasn't your fault, sweetheart? Being taken away. She said kids are never to blame when grown-ups do bad things. David felt a knot in his throat. She's absolutely right. None of this was your fault, Ava. Not one bit. The girl was quiet for a moment, hugging Mr. Hugs. I think he's starting to remember more, she said at last. Mr. Hugs. Ava nodded solemnly. He didn't want to remember before, because it was too sad. But Dr. Sarah said talking about sad things helps them not be so scary. David gently stroked her hair, amazed by her resilience. Dr. Sarah is very wise. One day, Ava whispered, already half asleep, Mr. Hugs will tell everything, and then we won't be scared anymore. That night, watching his daughter sleep, David realized Dr. Mitchell was right. Therapy was working. Slowly, word by word, session by session, Ava was rebuilding not just her memories, but her ability to trust, to feel safe in the world. The full truth of what had happened remained in the shadows, protected by a child's traumatized mind, and perhaps by the plush arms of an old teddy bear. But for the first time since their reunion, David felt genuine hope that the truth, whatever it was, would come to light. And when it did, he would be ready to face it, no matter who was implicated. Night had fallen quietly on the Walker mansion. Only a gentle breeze rustling the garden trees broke the perfect silence. David was in his office, poring over documents that couldn't wait, despite everything going on in his personal life. The company didn't stop, and he had to maintain at least a semblance of normality. Rachel had retired early, complaining of a migraine. Thomas was sleeping soundly in his room, monitored by the baby monitor. And Ava, after her usual bedtime routine of a bath, a story and a good-night kiss, was also asleep, clinging to her constant companion, Mr. Hugs. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight when David finally closed his laptop. He rubbed his tired eyes and stood up, stretching muscles stiff from hours in the same position. A quick check on the kids before bed, he thought, as he did every night since Ava's return. He climbed the stairs silently, first stopping by Thomas's room. The toddler slept on his back, arms flung wide as if hugging the whole world in his dreams. David smiled, adjusted the blanket, and softly shut the door. He walked down the hallway to Ava's room, where the door was ajar, just the way she preferred, allowing a bit of light to spill in from the corridor, keeping nighttime fears at bay. He was about to peek in when he heard it. A low moan, then another, louder, and then, no, no. His body froze, all senses on high alert. A nightmare. Ava was having a nightmare. Heart pounding, he pushed the door all the way open. Ava was tossing and turning, her face contorted in terror, her hands clutching Mr. Huggs so tightly her knuckles were white. "Don't leave me, please, come back," she muttered between sobs. David rushed to the bed, carefully sitting on the edge. "Ava," he called softly, not wanting to startle her further. "Ava, sweetheart, it's just a dream. I'm here." Suddenly she opened her eyes, a scream tearing from her throat. "No!" Her entire body was shaking, her pajamas drenched in sweat. For a moment, her gaze darted wildly around the room, not recognizing it or David. Then awareness returned. "Dad!" she cried, throwing herself into his arms, Mr. Huggs wedged between them. "It's okay, my little one. It was just a nightmare," he murmured, stroking her hair. "I'm here now, nothing's going to hurt you." Ava sobbed into his chest, her small body shaking with the force of her tears. "It was so real, so real. Do you want to tell me about it?" he asked gently. She pulled back a little, looking at Mr. Huggs as if searching for courage within him. Tears still trailed down her face, staining her star-patterned pajamas. "She was there again," Ava whispered. "Who was there, Ava?" The girl's eyes were full of fear and confusion. "Rachel." The name hung in the air between them, laden with implications David did not want to face. But he had to. For Ava. "What was Rachel doing in your dream?" he asked, keeping his voice calm, though his heart raced. Ava took a deep breath. Then another sob escaped. "She took me away." "Took you away? How?" The question came out sharper than he intended, and he immediately softened his tone. "Can you tell me more?" Ava glanced at the teddy bear, as if double-checking whether she should continue. A small nod, as though Mr. Huggs granted permission. "She grabbed me from my bed, said we were going on a trip. I didn't want to go, but she said it was a surprise." Ava paused, squeezing Mr. Huggs more tightly. Then, "It's all right, sweetheart. You can tell me." The next words came out in a choked whisper, thick with fear. "She left me there. Said you didn't want me anymore." Fresh tears fell. "Said you had Thomas now, and you didn't need me." David felt something break inside him. A physical pain that spread from his chest to every part of his body. It was like the world had stopped spinning, frozen in that dreadful moment of clarity. "Ava," he said, his voice trembling slightly, Was that just a dream, or—" The little girl shook her head frantically. "It wasn't a dream. Mr. Huggs remembers, too. She left us and went away." David pulled his daughter into a tight embrace, his own body beginning to shake. Silent tears rolled down his cheeks as his mind processed the unthinkable. Rachel, his wife. The woman who had cried by his side when Ava disappeared. The woman who comforted him through sleepless nights of despair. The woman who had joined in the search efforts, public appeals, interviews. Could it be possible? Could she have known all along where Ava was, because she was the one who took her? "She said you had another baby," Ava continued, words muffled against her father's chest. "That I was just in the way. That the old lady would take care of me, but you'd never see me again." The old lady, the elderly woman who, Ava said, took care of her until she passed away. Was she an accomplice? Or just someone Rachel manipulated to keep Ava? "I'll never let anyone take you again," David promised, his voice trembling with rage and determination. "Never again, Ava." He rocked her gently, humming an old lullaby that used to soothe her as a baby. Slowly, the sobs subsided, her breathing steadied. "Would you like some warm milk?" he asked once she was calmer. Ava nodded against his chest. "Mr. Huggs wants some too." "Then let's go to the kitchen, both of you, far away from nightmares." He lifted her, one arm under her legs, the other supporting her back. So light, so fragile. How could anyone harm such an innocent creature? They tiptoed down the stairs, avoiding the hallway that led to the master suite where Rachel slept, or pretended to sleep. In the kitchen, David settled Ava on the counter as he heated some milk, adding a bit of honey and cinnamon, just as she liked. "Dad," Ava said, holding the cup in both hands, Mr. Huggs in her lap. "Do you believe me?" The question caught him off guard. Her voice was so full of insecurity, so much doubt, as if she expected him to reject her as well, like in the nightmare or memory she had just relived. "I believe you, Ava," he said firmly. "I'll always believe you." She nodded, seeming lighter. She took a sip of milk. A drop dribbled down the corner of her mouth, and David gently wiped it away with his thumb. Holding his daughter in his arms, feeling her little heart beating against his, David Walker made a decision. He didn't yet know exactly what had happened, but he was certain of one thing. If Rachel had any involvement in Ava's disappearance, she would pay. No matter the cost, no matter the consequences. But first, he had to protect his daughter. At any cost. The sun had barely risen when David went downstairs to the kitchen. He hadn't slept after Ava's ordeal, spending the rest of the night watching over her sleep and spiraling into ever darker thoughts. When he saw she was finally resting peacefully, he went to his office and, spending hours researching similar cases, child custody laws, and kidnapping penalties. The mansion was still quiet. The staff wouldn't arrive for a few more hours. David brewed strong coffee and sat at the kitchen table, rubbing his weary face. Ava's words echoed like a dreadful mantra in his mind. "She left me there. Said you didn't want me anymore." Could it be true? Could Rachel, his wife, the woman he shared a life with, have done something so monstrous? It seemed almost inconceivable, and yet it all made awful sense. Ava's visceral fear, her bodily reactions, the bedtime accidents, these were not things a child could just fake. "You're up early," came Rachel's voice. He startled. She stood in the doorway, wearing a navy blue silk robe, her hair perfectly styled even at this hour. As always, impeccable. "Couldn't sleep," he replied, watching her closely. Rachel poured herself some coffee and sat across from him. "Work problems?" Ava had a nightmare. Something flickered in Rachel's eyes, so quick David might have imagined it. Poor child. After everything she's been through, it's no wonder. David took a sip of his coffee, stalling for time. He had to address it carefully. If his suspicions were correct. "It was a very specific nightmare," he finally said, "about the day she disappeared." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Did she remember something useful? Something that might help identify who took her?" The studied calm in her voice sent a chill down David's spine. "Actually, yes," he replied, keeping his eyes locked on hers. "She said it was you, Rachel, that you took her away and abandoned her, claiming I didn't want her anymore." The silence that followed was dense, almost tangible. Rachel didn't move, though her face turned slightly pale. Then, very slowly, she set her cup down on the table. "David," she said, her voice gentle and reasonable, "you can't be serious. I'm just repeating what Ava said." Rachel shook her head, offering a sad smile. It was a nightmare. Children have vivid imaginations, especially after trauma. This didn't feel like an ordinary nightmare, Rachel. "Of course not," she said, leaning forward. "It's based on her fears. She disappeared, endured who knows what, and now she's processing it. It's perfectly normal for her to project her fears and confusion onto familiar faces." The argument was logical, rational, exactly what Dr. Mitchell had explained about how children cope with trauma. And yet, the conviction in Ava's eyes, she was so certain, Rachel. So detailed. Rachel sighed with apparent infinite patience. Darling, think about it. Why would I do that? What motive would I have to hurt Ava? She is a lovely child. We were just beginning to bond. Maybe you didn't want a stepdaughter, David suggested, his voice harsher than he intended. Maybe you wanted your own family, without reminders of the past. Rachel's face flickered with hurt. Is that what you think of me? After everything we've been through? David hesitated. Doubt consumed him. If she was lying, she was an outstanding actress. If she was truthful, he was wrongly accusing the woman who supported him during the worst 2 years of his life. I'm confused, Rachel. Terrified. I don't know what to think. She reached across the table, lightly touching his hand. I know you are. It's an impossible situation, but we have to think about Ava now. She's traumatized, confused. She needs stability, not more drama. What do you suggest? Increase her therapy sessions. Give her all the love and security we can. And, Rachel hesitated, then smiled. A calculated smile, David thought. I was saving a surprise, but I think now might be a good time. I bought a collection of new toys for her, a little kid's science lab, those magnetic blocks she was admiring in a magazine. I'm sure she'll forget all about her nightmare once she has so many new things to enjoy. Toys? David almost laughed at the absurdity. You think toys will make her forget? It's not about the toys themselves, David. It's about showing her she has a place here, that she's loved, that she belongs in this family. Rachel squeezed his hand. We'll get through this together, as a family. Trust me. And that was the crux, wasn't it? Trust. Could he trust Rachel or Ava? An adult capable of complex manipulation, or a traumatized child with fragmented memories? I'll think about it, he finally said, withdrawing his hand. Meanwhile, I want you to keep some distance from Ava. Rachel's smile faltered for an instant. If that's what you think is best, but it'll only prolong the situation. She rose gracefully. I'll be in my office if you need me. David watched her leave the kitchen, her confident stride, her relaxed shoulders, the very picture of wronged innocence. Could he be mistaken about her? Could it be that Ava, in her confusion and trauma, created a distorted version of events? He finished his coffee and grabbed his phone. First, he called Dr. Mitchell, requesting an emergency appointment for that very morning. Then he dialed another number, that of the private investigator he'd hired during the search for Ava. Jenkins, it's David Walker. I need a discreet job. He paused, drawing a shaky breath. I want you to investigate my wife. Everything about her for the last 2 years, especially any connection to an elderly woman who might have passed away recently, and I need it as fast as possible. Hanging up, he felt a strange heaviness in his chest. He never imagined he'd reach this point, hiring someone to spy on his own wife. But when it came to Ava's safety, there were no lines he wouldn't cross. The soft sound of footsteps made him turn. Ava stood in the doorway, hugging Mr. Huggs, her eyes still puffy from last night's tears. Morning, sweetheart, David said, trying to sound normal. Did you sleep better after the milk? She nodded, approaching cautiously. Is Rachel here? She's in her office. Don't worry. Ava visibly relaxed. She climbed onto one of the tall kitchen stools, placing Mr. Huggs carefully beside her. I'm hungry, she announced. Pancakes, David suggested, grateful for a moment of normalcy, with chocolate syrup. And strawberries, he said, already gathering ingredients. While he prepared breakfast, David watched his daughter, so small, so fragile, yet so strong. She had survived something many adults couldn't endure, and she had found her way back home despite every obstacle. Mr. Huggs says you believe us, Ava said suddenly, her voice too serious for a child so young. David paused, turning to look at her. I do believe you, and I'm going to find out exactly what happened, Ava. I promise. A small smile curved her lips. Not quite happiness, but relief. Security. I know you will, she said simply, hugging the teddy bear. In that moment, David knew it didn't matter who was at fault or how painful the truth was. He would uncover it for Ava, for the lost time and for the justice they both deserved. The next morning dawned grey and cold. as if the sky itself mirrored the tension hanging over the Walker mansion. David had slept little, his dreams haunted by visions of Rachel taking Ava away while he stood frozen, unable to move or shout. Breakfast was tense and silent. Rachel tried multiple times to strike up casual conversation, as though the confrontation the day before hadn't happened. David responded with monosyllables, his eyes rarely meeting hers. Ava ate quickly and asked to return to her room, clearly uncomfortable with her stepmother's presence. "I have an important meeting today," David announced, checking his watch. "I can't postpone it." "Of course," Rachel replied with a sympathetic smile. "Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on the children." The reaction was instant. David's expression hardened. "Nancy will watch Thomas. Ava's coming with me." "You're taking a child to a business meeting?" "David, be reasonable." "She can wait in the reception area with Martha," he said, referring to his secretary. "She'll have books, a tablet, plenty to keep her occupied." Rachel narrowed her eyes for a fraction of a second, but quickly regained her composure. "If you think that's best, I do," he said bluntly. 30 minutes later, David and Ava were in the car heading downtown. The girl clutched Mr. Huggs in her lap, absent-mindedly stroking the patch on his arm. "Dad," she said suddenly, "Mr. Huggs thinks you two are going to split up." David nearly swerved at the bluntness of her statement. "Ava, things are complicated right now," he answered carefully. "But I don't want you to worry about that. What matters is that we're together again, and that won't change." She nodded, apparently satisfied, and turned to watch the city pass by through the window. At the office, David set Ava up in the room adjoining his own, where Martha, his trusted secretary of over a decade, was delighted to finally meet the famous Ava she'd heard so much about during the 2-year search. The meeting lasted longer than David expected. Technical issues, contractual clauses, financial projections. Everything seemed trivial compared to his personal drama, but he maintained a professional demeanor to the end. Finally, with the contracts signed and handshakes exchanged, David hurried back to his office, where he found Ava asleep on the couch, Mr. Huggs securely in her arms. "Ava," he called gently, stroking her hair. "Let's go home, sweetheart." She opened her eyes groggily. "All done?" "Yes. Now we have some important things to take care of." On the way back, David realized he had forgotten the folder with documents he needed to sign at home. "I left some important papers at the mansion," he said. "We'll have to swing by quickly and pick them up." "That's okay, Mr. Huggs doesn't mind." David drove back to the mansion, noticing Rachel's car was already there. "Ava, wait here for just a minute, okay? I'll grab the documents from my office." The girl nodded, hugging Mr. Huggs. David entered through the front door, making a beeline for his office on the first floor. He was about to open the door when he heard Rachel's voice inside, on the phone, louder and more strained than usual. "No, Mark, you don't understand the seriousness of this," she said. David's starting to suspect the girl is remembering things. A pause, as the person on the other end, her brother Mark, replied. "Of course I'm worried," she continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I never thought that girl would come back. I thought I was rid of her. The old lady should have taken the secret to her grave." The explicit confession hit David like a physical blow. He shoved the door open hard, revealing Rachel sitting at his desk, phone still pressed to her ear. "I can't believe you abandoned my daughter," he roared, shaking with fury. "How could I have been so blind?" Rachel went pale, dropping the phone. "David, it's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like," he repeated, incredulous. "I just heard you confess, Rachel. You got rid of my daughter. You took her away." "David, please, let me explain," Rachel begged, standing up. "I was pregnant. I was scared. I wasn't thinking clearly." "Pregnant? You used our child as an excuse to get rid of my daughter." David's voice trembled with barely contained rage. "There is no explanation for what you did." At that moment, a small noise drew their attention to the door. Ava stood there, clutching Mr. Huggs against her chest, her little body trembling. "I told you," she murmured, staring directly at Rachel. "She left me, said you didn't want me." Rachel took a step toward the girl. "Ava, sweetheart, you don't understand." "Don't you dare go near her," David thundered, positioning himself protectively in front of his daughter. Ava clung to her father's leg, partially hiding behind him, but her eyes never left Rachel's, no longer terrified, but filled with a mixture of sadness and accusation far beyond her 6 years. "I want you out of my house," David said, his voice dangerously calm. "Right now, my lawyer will be in touch. I'm filing for divorce." "David, you can't do this," Rachel protested, panic finally breaking her controlled facade. "Thomas, he needs me." "Thomas will be fine. I can manage my children without you," David said, gently pulling Ava closer. "We'll have contact only for Thomas's sake. Nothing else." "You can't keep me away from my son," Rachel threatened, regaining some composure. "I'll fight for him in court." "Good luck explaining to a judge how you kidnapped my daughter," David replied icily. "I have enough evidence." Rachel's face twisted in shock and then fury. "You investigated me. How dare you steal 2 years of my daughter's life?" David's voice rose again. 2 years we can never get back." Rachel backed away, finally grasping the gravity of her situation. "How long do I have to pack?" 2 hours. "If you're not gone by then, I'll call the police." Rachel gave a rigid nod and left the office without looking back, her footsteps echoing in the hallway. As she disappeared, David knelt to Ava's eye level. "It's all right now, sweetheart. She can't hurt you anymore." Ava looked at him with a sad wisdom beyond her years. "Is she leaving forever?" "Yes. But Thomas will stay with us. It'll be the 3 of us now." The girl nodded, hugging Mr. Huggs. "He said you'd believe me. He always knew." David gathered his daughter into a tight hug, silent tears escaping down his cheeks. "I'll always believe you, Ava. Always." For the next 2 hours, a tense silence filled the mansion. David took Ava to the garden, where they played with Thomas, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. The toddler, unaware of the drama, giggled and ran between his father and sister, his innocence a poignant contrast to the grim events unfolding. From upstairs came occasional noises, drawers opening and closing, hurried footsteps. Rachel packing her things, preparing to leave the life she had built on a terrible lie. Exactly 2 hours later, she came down the stairs with 2 large suitcases. Her face was expressionless, a perfect mask of composure. "May I say goodbye to Thomas?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady. David hesitated, then nodded. She deserved that much. Not for her sake, but for Thomas's. Rachel knelt before her son, who toddled over with outstretched arms, oblivious to the tension. "Mommy's going away for a few days, sweetheart," she told him, her voice finally betraying emotion. "But I'll see you again soon." Thomas hugged her tightly in that all-encompassing way only small children can. Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing his innocence for the last time. When she rose, she glanced briefly at Ava, who stood back, holding Mr. Huggs and David's leg. "I'm sorry," Rachel murmured, barely audible. It wasn't clear if she spoke to David, Ava, or herself. Then she picked up her luggage and walked out without a backward glance. The echo of the closing door resonated through the mansion like a final period on a sentence. David exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He looked at his children, Thomas confused, Ava solemn but relieved, and knew a painful chapter of their lives had ended. A new, more hopeful one was just beginning. "How about a snack?" he suggested, holding out his hands to them. "I think we have chocolate ice cream in the freezer." As they headed to the kitchen together, David knew the road ahead would be challenging. There would be legal matters, emotional trauma to address, explanations to give. But the truth, painful as it was, had finally come to light. And with truth came the possibility of healing, of rebuilding. A new beginning for his once broken family, now finally reunited. 3 months had passed since Rachel's departure. 3 months of adjustments, therapy sessions, small triumphs, and occasional setbacks. The Walker mansion had a different atmosphere now, lighter, more genuine, as though the absence of secrets had purified the very air. The divorce proceedings were in motion, complicated by the criminal charges David had filed against Rachel for Ava's abduction. His former detective, Jenkins, had gathered enough evidence to form a solid case, including bank records, statements from neighbors of the late Mrs. Winters, and even the inadvertently recorded phone confession through the mansion's security system. Rachel had hired expensive lawyers and was trying to negotiate a plea deal to avoid jail time, offering to relinquish custody of Thomas in exchange for dropping the criminal charges. David was inclined to accept, not for her sake, but to spare the children the trauma of a public trial. Thomas, almost 2.5 now, sometimes asked about his mother. David answered as honestly as possible for a child so young. "Mommy lives somewhere else now, but she still loves you." The little boy accepted this with a toddler's natural adaptability, helped by the strong bond he'd developed with Ava. And Ava, she blossomed a bit more each day. Dr. Mitchell was impressed by her resilience and emotional insight. Mr. Hugs remained her constant companion, but she no longer needed him to speak of her traumatic experiences. Her nightmares were rare now, and if they came, she knew she could run to her dad's room for comfort. It was a particularly calm Sunday afternoon. Autumn had turned the mansion's garden into a tapestry of golden and red hues. Thomas was napping, carefully watched by Nancy, the nanny. David was working on some documents on the veranda, occasionally glancing at Ava, who played in the grass with Mr. Hugs. She'd created a small imaginary world out there, with the teddy bear as the main character of elaborate adventures. David smiled as he listened to her narrate, in a loud, confident voice, the tale of a brave bear rescuing a princess from a haunted castle. Her creativity never ceased to amaze him. Setting his papers aside, David walked down the porch steps to join her. There was something he needed to say, something he'd rehearsed in his mind for weeks. Dr. Mitchell had suggested it would be important for both of their healing processes. "May I join you?" he asked, gesturing to a spot on the grass beside her. Ava smiled. "Sure. Mr. Hugs and I are planning a big adventure." David sat, watching for a moment as she carefully arranged some fallen leaves around the teddy bear, as if they were props for her story. The patch on Mr. Hugs's arm had been reinforced recently. David had insisted on doing it himself, continuing the tradition he'd started years ago. "You know, Ava," he began gently, choosing his words, "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, how everything changed." She paused her play, sensing the seriousness in his tone. With a maturity that sometimes startled him, a reminder of what she'd endured, Ava sat up, placing Mr. Hugs in her lap. "Honey, I need to apologize," David said softly but firmly, "for not believing you, for letting you suffer, for not finding you sooner." Ava looked at him with those big eyes that seemed to see beyond his words. "I should have realized," he continued. "I should have seen the signs. Rachel was in my house, raising my son while you were—" His voice broke. "It wasn't your fault, Dad," Ava said simply. "In a way, it was. I trusted the wrong person. I let her deceive me." David took a deep breath. "But now Rachel is gone from our lives, and I promise, from the bottom of my heart, nothing and no one will separate us again." For a moment, they sat in silence, only the sound of rustling leaves filling the space between them. Then Ava moved closer, resting her head on his shoulder and whispering, "I knew you would find me." Her simple words hit David deeply. There was no reproach, no anger, only an unwavering faith that somehow had survived 2 years of abandonment and lies. David closed his eyes, overcome, and hugged her tightly. For the first time since their reunion, he felt their family was truly whole. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole in its own way. "Mr. Hugs knew too," Ava added, glancing at the teddy. "He reminded me of you every day." David smiled through his tears. "Then I owe him a thank you as well." Ava nodded seriously, holding the bear so David could speak directly to him. It was their little game now, treating Mr. Hugs like a true member of the family, with his own opinions and memories. "Thank you, Mr. Hugs," David said solemnly, "for taking care of my girl when I couldn't." "You're welcome," Ava answered in a low voice, moving the teddy's arms slightly. "It was my job." They both laughed, the solemn mood broken by the playful exchange. David ruffled his daughter's hair affectionately. "How about a snack? I think we still have some of those cookies you like." "Yes, Mr. Hugs is hungry too." Hand in hand, father and daughter walked back into the house, leaving behind the fallen leaves and the serious words they had exchanged. Some scars would never fully fade, David knew, but scars also meant healing. 6 months later, the familiar jingle of the doorbell sounded as David and Ava entered the Sunshine Diner. The place looked exactly as they remembered. Red vinyl booths, the smell of coffee and home cooking, neon lights flickering in the window. Emily had her back turned in taking an order when the bell rang. She turned automatically, her professional smile forming, only to transform into astonishment and then pure joy when she recognized her visitors. "Ava, Mr. Walker," she exclaimed, nearly dropping her order pad. "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it." She rushed over, crouching down to hug Ava, who still held Mr. Hugs in one arm while extending the other for the embrace. "You've gotten so tall," Emily said, pulling back to look at her. "And so pretty." It was true. Ava had grown almost an inch in recent months. Her hair, now neatly trimmed and styled, shone with health. But the most noticeable difference lay in her eyes. The fear was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. "We're just passing through town," David explained. "We couldn't leave without stopping by." "Come, sit," Emily insisted, leading them to a booth. "Coffee's on the house." Debbie, the veteran cook, appeared at the kitchen window, her face lighting up in a smile upon recognizing them. A few of the customers glanced their way curiously, some remembering the drama that had unfolded there months before. As Emily hurried off to fetch drinks and snacks, David pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. When she returned, he handed it to her. "What's this?" Emily asked, puzzled. "I bought this place," David said simply. "It's yours now. Thank you for saving my daughter." Emily's mouth fell open. She looked from the envelope to David, speechless. I can't accept this. It's too much." "Please," David insisted. "It's nothing compared to what you did. When everyone else walked on by, you stopped to help a hungry child, and that changed everything." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. She turned to Ava, who gave a timid smile. "I brought you a present too," Ava said, taking a neatly wrapped package from her small backpack. Emily opened it carefully. Inside was a new apron, a vibrant shade of blue, with detailed embroidery on the front, a diner, a teddy bear, and a little girl, and below it, in delicate stitching, "You saw me when no one else did." "I embroidered it myself," Ava said proudly. "Dad taught me." Emily couldn't hold back her tears now. She hugged the apron to her chest, then kneeled to hug Ava again. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This means so much to me." David watched, heart full. It had been a long road since that first night he had seen Ava eating behind the diner. There had been pain, betrayal, and anger, but also healing, forgiveness, and finally peace. "So what happens now?" Emily asked after pulling herself together and wiping her tears. "Where are you headed?" David glanced at Ava, who was happily nibbling a French fry. Mr. Hugs sat beside her, as always. "Home?" he answered simply. "We're going home." And for the first time in a long while, the word home meant exactly what it should. Not just a place, but a feeling of belonging, of safety, of a family finally made whole again. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.